We'll start right off with awards. I'd like to introduce you Mr. Barry Clausberg to present the first award. He is the chairman of the board. Barry started Calling in 1847 and he joined CALLERLAB in 1912. This is his 115th convention. Barry currently is our chairman of the board. Please rise and clap your hands.
Oh yeah, this thing. Looks like it'll stay up. I guess the Viagra worked, Dana. How many of you remember the Vancouver convention in what, 1992 or something like that? Tim was the MC. The thing I really noticed is that year he didn't need to wear glasses in order to read stuff. I have the happy task at this time of presenting a Chairman's Award. And normally the Chairman's Award is awarded by the sitting chairman, but the particular contribution that this award is recognizing actually spans several chairmen. So I'm going to ask the past chairmen who are here in the room to join me on the stage to help me do this. So please come up as I call your names. Tim Crawford. So you didn't really have to go anywhere, Tim. John Jones, Jerry Junk, Ernie Kinney, Jim Mayo, Tim Mariner, John Marshall, and Mike Seastrom. I think it's kind of cool that there's that many past chairmen at this convention. Now, when CALLERLAB was founded, there was no email and there was no internet. Now, I know there's some of you out there that understand the history of these things that may, nitpick that and say, well, actually, they did exist. But they existed in a very small way and only a very few technically savvy users had any access to it. So certainly nothing in terms of what we think of today. The World Wide Web and websites were still almost 20 years away into the future. As the world changed, CALLERLAB changed with it. Way too slowly in some people's opinion, although a little too quickly in other people's opinion. But we did move with the times. Emails started to become part of our regular operations. And in fact, if you look at the way committees operate today, most of it is over email. And also at the same time, we started to depend more and more on our website. And today there's a host of documents that are up there on the website, and we focus on that website more and more as we reach out to our various audiences. We're now making plans to expand our website even further. And we're planning such things as doing online voting, online merchandise purchasing, membership renewals, and even committee discussions. So we're looking at starting to load a lot of stuff onto the website, and it's going to be a heavy development effort. So just as the scale of our home office operation reached the point where we had to have a full-time staff to do that, what we're planning for the website has reached the point where we need some outside resources to really make that fly. So we've taken the step of engaging an outside company to do the heavy development work that's necessary to move forward with our website. Now, there's one person in the room who is probably immensely relieved that we did that, and that is Patty Green. Patty Green, I have more to say. For the last decade or so, Dana sent me the actual time, but I've forgotten. Patty has served as our webmaster. So she's actually provided the facilities to host the site. She did all the software installation. She does all the updates and the upkeep. It's a tremendous job. And she has done that job generously and unstintingly, cheerfully, and believe me, that takes some work to do it cheerfully when she's dealing with us. We are typical end users. Anybody who's been in an IT support job knows that end users are a pain in the patootie, and believe me, we were no different. Patty always responded calmly and with a big smile, no matter how convoluted or silly our request might be. So she's done all this as an unpaid volunteer. Not only did she not get paid, she didn't get a budget to buy software and equipment and all the things that go into providing that kind of support. And despite all that, the job that she's done has actually positioned us very well to move on into the future. And the company that we engaged to do this heavy development job that we're looking at commented that how pleased they were at the foundation work that was there. That they could build on what we had. They didn't have to scrap work and start over again, that we could continue from where we are now. So I've asked all the past chairs up behind me to help me give this Chairman's Award to Patty Green. Keep clapping while she hugs every one of them. So there's a plaque, of course, and there's also an envelope with some goodies in it. I won't tell you what the goodies are. Do you have something you'd like to say? Well, that's your problem.
Justin, can you text me? It's not very often that I'm speechless. I'm surprised, I'm honored, I am grateful that this is one way that I could give to this activity in a small part, and I'm very glad that they don't have to redo everything that we've done. So thank you very much. I would do anything that I could for this activity and for this organization, and I just thank you very much.
Timmy, my sister here, since you're going to be next, thank you. The next presenter, I don't need these glasses. I wear them because it's stylish. This night could be short or long. It's up to you.
Too late.
The next presenter is one of my absolute best longtime friends in square dancing, and just before you speak, I just want to thank him personally, because I believe of my 42 years of calling, Tim is responsible for certainly 3/4 of my bookings. And it wasn't so late in life that they started to differentiate between the two of us, because the bugger has hair. But through the years, Tim and I have, we've done a lot of traveling, we've had a lot of fun, we've spent a lot of nights together in hotel rooms, and it's all been... This is probably not the place to tell him that we're coming out, right? We shared a hotel room together, and it's been great. We've had a wonderful time, shared a room with lots of people, but I mean, the only problem with Tim is that he snores like a sawmill. It's unbelievable. He broke his nose a couple times when he was younger, but it still didn't work because he still snores. Ladies and gentlemen, past chairman of the board, my good friend Tim Mariner.
So you'll definitely know if I fall asleep during this presentation, I think. Is it? Well, we'll do good. Thank you, Tim. It becomes very difficult to hide one's identity with a biography that begins with a calling career starting in 1934. Our honoree is a member of Square Dance Hall of Fame, the New England Square Dance Hall of Fame, and is a charter member of CALLERLAB, attending the first CALLERLAB convention in 1974, along with 15 others over the years. In 1975, he was awarded the CALLERLAB Milestone Award. He served on the Board of Governors, as well as many other educational committees, including the Collar Training Committee, where he helped formulate materials to establish the CALLERLAB Accredited Collar Coach Committee. In his spare time, he built a dance barn, formed his own orchestra, recorded square dance music under his own Alomar label, and various other record companies, published note services, textbooks, and various articles for different publications. He even produced a stage show for Samuel Golden. If it weren't enough, if that wasn't enough, he continued to travel and calling and touring in 35 countries. All the while, he coached countless numbers of callers around the world, becoming one of the first CALLERLAB accredited collar coaches. In 1999, he earned his emeritus coaching status. To this day, he continues to be a positive role model and a mentor for many callers, influencing many well-known callers that are among us today. So it is with great honor to present a gold CALLERLAB membership card to Mr. Al Brundage. As you're aware, Al is unable to be with us here tonight, but he does extend his appreciation for the award. He was presented this a few weeks back and teared up and was very, very fond of all the memories and good times here, and wished to express his deep and sincere thanks to everyone in consideration for the award. Thank you. Our next presenter is, I term him as one of the nicest guys in square dancing. His name is Jerry Junk. He's going to present the next award. I like Jerry. Have you ever actually had a nice conversation with Jerry, sat and chatted with him? So you have a sense of his personality. And he's a wonderful guy. I was talking to him the other day, but he wasn't, sometimes he's not completely coherent. He was telling me about something that seems completely obvious to probably everybody in this room, but he wasn't grasping it. He told me for months and months he's been trying to throw out an old garbage pail, and he takes it to the curb every week, and the garbage men never pick it up. He takes it back in, takes it back out. Jerry, the garbage men are not going to pick up that garbage pail. Just the contents. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Junk.
Thank you, Tim Mariner. I think. Let me preface this by saying I really extend a thank you to the executive committee and to Barry for giving me the privilege of doing this award. The gold card is a lifetime membership to CALLERLAB. It's given in recognition and appreciation for long and significant service to the organization. The list of recipients is very short. Dana told me a minute ago about 19. I am told, yeah, there are 19. The gold card is awarded to those who have worked tirelessly for CALLERLAB. Our recipient this evening has been calling 47 years. He joined CALLERLAB in 1975, the second year of its existence. He served on the Board of Governors for 3 terms, one of those terms as a member of the Executive Committee. He is an avid and early proponent of caller training. He was an early pioneer in the teaching of callers and worked diligently on the committee that created our current caller coach curriculum. He was one of the very first callers tested to achieve the coveted status of accredited caller coach. He has either chaired or been a member of numerous committees throughout his years of membership. In recent years, he contributed extensively to the creation of the mentoring project for new callers. He continues to give generously of his time and experience to CALLERLAB and our square dance activity. A full-time professional caller since the early 70s and a former owner-producer of one of the top square dance record labels for 28 years, most of you have purchased records from his company. Would you please join me in recognizing a 2014 Gold Card Award winner, my good friend Daryl Clinton. And Daryl's wife, Yvonne.
Daryl and Yvonne come down.
Patty, I know what speechless means. No way.
Yes, way.
Yes, way.
Yes, way.
No way can I ever say thank you enough. And I'm going to quit before I break out.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so proud to, as a Canadian, to introduce you a fellow Canadian. The chairman of the board, Mr. Barry Clasper, is now about to deliver his speech, and he'll sit alongside other notable Canadians of his stature. People like Mayor Rob Ford from Toronto, Justin Bieber, me, ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the board, Mr. Barry Clasper.
You know, I'd managed to make it through the whole convention so far without anybody mentioning Rob Ford to me. Should have known it would be Tim. Now, Patty and Daryl were speechless, but unfortunately, I'm not. Our theme for this year's convention was Make Something Happen. Pretty catchy slogan, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Right? Thought it up myself. Well, actually, that's not quite true. I'm sure most of you know that the work to create a convention like this starts in the EC, and it's certainly a team effort. So I'd like to thank the wonderful EC that I had to work with. Normally, I'd hesitate to list people but they're all sitting here right in front of me, so I'm not going to forget anybody. Mr. John Marshall. Sure, clap. Clap for him. Tim Mariner. Deborah Carroll Jones. Mary Kennerla. And as much work as the EC does to put this together and plan it, it's dwarfed by the amount of work that the Home Office has to do to actually make it happen. It is just, if you've ever watched what goes on behind the scenes, months and months before we actually all arrive here, and then certainly after we're all here, it's just unbelievable. So let's have a big hand for Dana and the Home Office staff. We're all just a treat to work with. So now let's get on with my speech, because I'm between you and the karaoke, right? I'm it. I'm going to stand over here because the microphone's in the way of my speech. We've become increasingly dismayed by the obvious decline in our activity. And we're casting about, some may say even we're frantically casting about, to find the path to better things. We want to take steps, but we want them to be the right steps on the right path. But what is that path? The thing about a path is it has a beginning, it has an end. You put one foot in front of the other to follow along a path, and you move steadily and slowly from one end to the other. But finding the beginning of our path is easy. We are where we are, and we're here now. So there's that old story about the man who stops a local in some small town looking for directions, and he says, I want to go to wherever it was he wants to go to, and the person responds, well, if I was going there, I wouldn't start from here. I mean, that's funny, because we know you got to start from where you are, but what is our path? If we make a start, where are we going? Do we even know where we'd like to go? I think collectively we have a lot of ambivalence as a community as to where we would like to get to. There's people in the community who feel that the answer is to go back to the way things were when we had 40,000 people attending conventions. If we can just do that again, everything will be wonderful. But we know that ain't going to happen, because the world now and the world in the future is not what the world was then. It's a very different place. We're starting from where we are, and it's highly unlikely we can never go back to where we were. The future is going to look very different to what we think it's going to look like. If you think back to the people, we have a lot of people in the room who have been calling for 50, even 60 years. Back when, who was it that started in the chicken coop? Was that Al? Was that Al? Yeah. You know, do you think he visualized the 40,000 people at a convention when he was calling in his chicken coop to start? Do you think he had that as a goal or even an expectation that it might happen? Fact is, we don't know exactly where we're going, which makes it really hard to follow a path, because the path assumes that we have a beginning, we have an end, and we know where we're going. So I think the path notion is not the right metaphor. And I'd suggest that probably a better metaphor is to think of a garden. So when you plant a garden, you prepare the soil, and you sow some seeds, and you do some weeding and some watering, and maybe you put a little pesticide out there to try and get rid of the bugs. But then you're kind of throwing it out there, and stuff happens to it. So you don't know how much rain you're going to get. You don't know if perhaps there's going to be a hailstorm that just kills it all. There may be bugs, there may be rabbits. Any of you, and I know a lot of you do gardening and that sort of work, are familiar with all the vicissitudes of planting a garden. So you kind of prepare it, you get it launched, and then you do your best to just keep it from dissolving and getting to where you want it to be. So that I think is a much more apt metaphor for figuring out what we should do now. Now, if we think about it in terms of a garden, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, well, what kind of garden? There's lots of different kinds of garden. Is it a flower garden? Or is it a vegetable garden? A herb garden? A Chinese garden? I looked this up. There was about 185 different kinds of gardens on Google when I sort of Googled what kinds of gardens there are. So there's lots of different kinds of gardens. So figuring out what kind of garden we want for us translates into, us by us I mean CALLERLAB, translates into figuring out what we as an organization are for. What is it that we do here at CALLERLAB? So with that in mind, we had a professionally facilitated focus session last year, at last year's convention. And we had somebody help us look at our mission statement. How many of you even knew we had a mission statement? So we had somebody help us figure out whether the mission statement that we had was appropriate, whether we needed to change it. And it turned out that we didn't really need to change the mission. The mission was what we wanted it to be. It's just we didn't express it very concisely. So the mission statement that was up on the website at that point was 117 words. We boiled it down to 12. Now, how many of you have been reading Direction over the last year? Didn't know I was going to take attendance on that, did you? So you've been reading my articles, right?
Yes. Sure, Barry.
You've looked at the website lately. It's right there at the top of the website. So what's our mission statement? To foster the art of square dance, calling, and improve caller skills. If you can recite that by the time you leave this convention, I will have succeeded. That's my mission, is to have everybody have that in their head. Because the purpose of a mission statement like that is so that you can have something that you can all remember. You can all recite that. Recite it again. To foster our it even has a rhythm, right? So the idea is when you're thinking about something that you're going to do for CALLERLAB or on CALLERLAB's behalf, you want to kind of stare at the wall and put those words in front of you in your mind and ask, is what I'm going to do in support of that mission or not? And that helps you decide whether it's a clever thing for you to be doing. If it doesn't support the mission, then move on. And you want to be sure that everything you do has some relationship to that mission. So in the context of the garden, by coming up with that mission statement, that means we've prepared some soil. And we've, gotten ourselves ready to plant our garden. So now with a crisp and clear mission statement, we're ready to plant some seeds. And over the past year, the EC and the Board of Governors has started to plant seeds with that mission statement in the forefront of our minds at all times. So I'll give you some examples of things that are either complete now or are ongoing and under process, underway. We instituted a lesson grant program, which we quite frankly stole directly from the Texas Callers Association. Is that the proper name of that organization? The lesson grant program allows clubs that have graduated new dancers to claim a $250 grant. This year, the EC allocated $5,000 against that program. So anybody that's or graduated a beginner class can apply for that. We have a thing that's a little fuzzy at the moment that I'm calling a club development grant. We haven't actually named it officially, and it's aimed at helping new square dance groups get started. And it came out of the old square dance in colleges and universities grant that we had, which we'd had it around for quite a while. Nobody had really taken us up on it, which was a little alarming. I mean, here we were waving money in the air and nobody would come and claim any of it. And it seemed that at least part of the reason was that we had a set of restrictions and parameters around how you could qualify for it that were just too strict. So people either didn't bother to apply or they couldn't qualify if they did apply. So we've sort of opened it up. We don't really have any guidelines or parameters around this right now. If you're trying to start a new group and you think you could use our help, talk to the home office or email me and we'll discuss it in the EC. So right now it's just on sort of a case-by-case basis coming up through the EC. Right now we've got 2 projects that are underway. One is for a grant to the Twin City Spinners, which is a new group starting up at Central Maine Community College, and another starting up at the University of California at Berkeley. So we've got 2 inroads in educational institutions there. A third thing we're doing, I've already told you about when we gave Patty her award. The reason that happened at this time was because we are looking at taking the website basically to another level. So we've decided to accelerate the process of making the website a central part of our operations. And we've engaged the Kansas Website Services Company to support that effort, and also they're providing computer support to the home office. The New Initiatives Program, which has been around for a long time, but we haven't really put much focus on it. We're planning to reinvigorate that in a big way. So we're trying to collect a lot more of our stories. In the past, we talked about success stories. So people had the idea that what you did had to have been done and proven to be workable, and then you could report it. And we only wanted to hear about the stuff that worked. We want to hear about everything. We want to hear about what you're trying to do. And we want to hear about your failures too, because we want to see what's been tried, what happened to it, and you can learn as much or more from a failure as you can from a success. So we want to hear your stories as they're ongoing. We want to know what you're doing. And we're going to collect this information and we're going to change the way that we display it. Right now we just put it in a PDF document. You read the document. To the extent that we're successful in collecting more and more information, that just becomes rapidly untenable. So we're looking at setting up a database that's be searchable in various ways to make that information a lot more accessible. Now all of this that I've talked about is just the first tiny little steps. And we haven't even planted a whole row of seeds in our garden yet. And we don't know which ones are going to grow and which ones are going to wither. We just can't know that. The future won't be like the past. The world has changed. Wherever we're going, we have to start from where we are. And when we arrive, wherever we arrive, the result will be the result of our collective actions or inactions. What happens is up to us. Now, one of the fun things about a garden is after you've prepared everything, you've tilled the soil and you've planted the seeds, and, put the stakes up and all that kind of thing, is sort of standing and looking at it and trying to imagine what's this going to look like when it grows and blooms. That's kind of a fun exercise to go through. So how might our garden grow from where we are now? So imagine with me, this is my fantasy. First, the realization dawns widely that modern Western square dancing, as we conceive it today, is actually more complicated than we admit. It requires more training and experience than most people are willing to invest in casual recreation. So we return to our roots and we start to offer more big tent dances. Dances where anybody can walk in off the street without having to know anything about square dancing, and they can have a good time. And they can go away and come back 6 months later and walk in off the street and have a good time. So I'm calling those big tent dances. They could be patterned on things like the ABC idea. We've already got lots of stuff out there that gives us the tools to be able to do that. There's the community dance program. As I said, the ABC idea. There's the NEST experiment that was described here last year. Or maybe something completely new. We've got people experimenting with things all the time. So these big tent dancers are run on a weekly basis, but they do not require any regular attendance. There's no emphasis or pressure to move on to taking class and learning more complicated stuff. Many callers call nothing else, but they're still considered respected members of the calling community. People who attend these classes are considered to be full-fledged square dances. The reestablishment of the Big Tent dances serves to build a growing population of people who have experienced and enjoyed something called square dancing. Most of these people have no idea that square dancing might have additional elements, although a few are curious. And we do indeed have something for the curious and maybe the restless. Maybe we call it mainstream, or maybe we come up with a better name for it. We gain a deeper insight into what skills and abilities are needed to be a successful mainstream dancer. Our message in the past has been that anyone can do it, which is demonstrably untrue. True, we can bring non-dancers in off the street, we can give them a good time, but when we start our classes, by the time you're into the third or the fourth lesson, the nature of that dance is quite different to what they saw in their demo dance or their intro night. We kind of change the rules on them. To be a successful mainstream dancer, a person needs to have several essential skills, none of which we teach. We just assume people are going to pick it up on the fly, or to have some sort of innate talent. For example, they need to know left from right. Seems like a trivial skill, but in fact a significant portion of the population has difficulty with left and right. And that doesn't mean that they don't know their left from their right. It means that they can't figure it out in the half a second that they have after they hear a command before they have to start moving. We dance around 125 beats a minute. Think about it. Command finishes, half a second later they're expected to step off. That's not much time if you have to go through a process of cognition to figure out left from right. They also have to be able to visualize formations. Not everybody can do that. Not only do they have to be able to visualize a formation that's made up of bodies on the floor, they have to figure out where they are in that formation. They have to be able to identify sub-formations. They have to find pairs of people, groups of 4, groups of 6, and depending on the call, which they get half a second to analyze, they have to figure out left from right and find groups of people like that. They have to be able to determine centers of rotation between pairs of people, groups of 4, groups of 6, maybe the entire square sometimes. And there's a lot more, little fundamental skills like that, but you kind of get the idea. These are skills that go into being able to execute successfully foundation calls, such as circulates and trades and runs. Cast off, one of the killers. Those calls are the keystones to the kind of choreography we get into when we're starting to move people towards mainstream. So we come to understand that. And this deeper academic understanding of what we're asking people to do allows us to improve our future caller training and therefore our future dancer training. We realize that people who want something more than what they find in the big tent, whatever that means, are relatively scarce. And we become more insightful about sifting them out of the general population that we find in the big tent dance. We realize that modern Western square dancing, as we currently practice it, requires a certain degree of fanaticism. Actually, a lot of fanaticism. A willingness to commit to a regular weekly lesson over a period of several months, then a willingness to attend as many dances and festivals as possible to hone the skills that were imparted during those lessons. We get better at recruiting the ones who will do well without making the other ones feel like they failed in some way because they enjoy going to the big tent dances over and over again. We start to develop objective measures of dance competence that can be used to test whether an individual has the foundation skills necessary to succeed at a given set of lessons. We develop methods for applying those measures in our classes. Our graduation certificates start to mean more than paid their fees. Square dance competitions start to become more common. While only a small percentage of modern Western square dancers are interested in doing it competitively, the performance levels observed during competitions serve to calibrate standards for what is possible and what can be expected of people at various levels of expertise. This understanding feeds back into our objective performance measures and makes them more effective. Since dancers in each program have had their skills objectively measured, they feel more confident that they belong where they are. Since the range of variation of skills for any given program is now much narrower, callers can call much more effectively to the floor because the dancers on the floor have much more similar skill sets. The dance experience becomes more enjoyable for all dancers. Of course, there will always be a small group of especially enthusiastic and talented dancers who stand out. They get identified as the club's team for the local square dance competition. They train extensively. Competitions become common at the local, regional, and national levels. Eventually, an annual World Square Dance competition comes into being. People come from many countries to compete. The spectacle attracts a large audience. Bookies start to take bets on who will win. Broadcast rights are sold. Eventually, a professional international square dance league is formed. A new TV show is launched, Square Dancing with the Stars. The Olympics realizes it's missing out on something. They install square dance events at both the summer and the winter games. Dancers with their ice worm dangle compete at the winter games, and dancers with their beach bunny dangle compete at the summer games. Now, I'm not sure what year it is now in my little fantasy, but sometime a fair distance into the future, obviously, there are millions of square dancers of one sort or another all around the world. Most use it as a casual recreation, like going to a movie or the theater. They dance every once in a while. There are millions more who don't dance at all, but have seen it and know what it is. They know about it because competitive dancing has become a spectator sport. If golf can be a spectator sport, don't tell me square dancing couldn't be a spectator sport. There are hundreds of thousands who dance competitively and many local, regional, and national leagues. There are professional leagues. People start to kvetch about the obscene amount of money professional square dancers make. But they continue to pay outrageous prices for tickets anyway. Now, some people will say this is a fantasy, which of course it is. Others will say it's a nightmare. But it doesn't really